and it let out this blood-curdling, guttural scream.
On the side of the road, he sees a deer carcass and something eating on it, which he thought was a bear. And as the lights hit it, it stood up. And, like, this gives me chills talking about it. He said it stood up and it had the face of a man.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bigfoots of America podcast show. This episode is episode number 19. And boy, are we busy right now. We have officially started the Bigfoots of Michigan TV pilot series, season 3. So we've got episodes 1 and 2 in the can right now. Tomorrow we load up and we head down to Blue Creek, Ohio to meet up with Donna Copus, who's been hanging around the Sasquatch, or she's aware of the Sasquatch that has lived for probably close off the top of her head about 150 years old. And yeah, we get to go down there with some Shawnee Indians. We had to get permission to come down there. And so we are just so excited about all that. Everything is exploding right now and we are at full throttle. But right now, episode 19, this guy, man, what a great guy. You know what? I've actually only talked to him a couple of times. I met him through the North Carolina investigators team with George Lunsford. You know, they do all things paranormal, Bigfoot, and all of that. But I met our next guest, Harley Owens, from that team. Now, Harley is a Bigfoot and cryptid researcher from East Tennessee. And I'll tell you, he's a younger guy. You know, he could be my son, but he is so knowledgeable on this subject. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and try to bring Harley in. Hey, Harley, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome, man. Dude, I always keep one eye on what you're doing. And when we first talked, one of the first things you showed me is your Dogman pictures. And I about fell out of my chair, man. And it's one of those instances where you really had to watch your back, man. Those things were coming up behind you. You're able to get a picture off, and then you were able to get out of the area.
Well, it don't even work like that. Honestly, I use the back trail camera like what Scott Carpenter done. I never did take. Well, the one instance I did take a picture, but the other times it's video.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, right. Mounted on the back of your backpack or whatever, so it's facing reverse, and then that causes them to feel more comfortable to show themselves.
Yes, absolutely. And I always encourage people, if you're not doing it, you're missing out on a lot. It's, because they expect you to just keep looking forward, and left and right. They don't expect you to look behind you. So whenever you're recording behind you, you're going to get them.
Fantastic. I'm going to try to have that set up then this weekend while I'm out in the field. But let's get to you. All right, man. So what I always tell everybody, and I told you this backstage, is this is your episode, Harley. You're going to start wherever you want to start. Tell us about how you got involved in all this and really what's it all about. So go ahead, my man. The show is yours. I'm sure I'll interject and ask a question here and there, but go ahead.
All right, yeah. So growing up, this was the Bible Belt. You always heard the stories, keep your blinds closed at night. You don't whistle in the woods, all this stuff, or the boogers will get you. And, growing up, it was in the back of my mind. I was like, okay, it could be possible. And then as I got a little bit older, I was like, yeah, this is just the biggest crock of bull crap out there. And so as soon as I graduated high school, my dad wanted me to go to lineman school. Well, I didn't do it. I went straight into work, and well, here I am now, right back into it. But I went and worked for my dad's neighbor Tri-State Auction and Realty was the company name, and we traveled all over the East Coast, Pennsylvania, Ohio, just a little bit of everywhere. And what we done was we auctioned off sawmills. You know, we'd go in, pressure wash all the equipment and all that stuff, and then we'd sell everything. So it was in September of 2020. We went to a place called Pound, Virginia. It's right on the Kentucky border, right there in the heart of Appalachia. And so a week prior to this encounter, I got up there with a buddy of mine, and we get out. You know, we start talking to the owner of this place, and he starts telling us about this quote unquote now bear that kept coming into the sawmill. Well, looking at it now, I'm pretty sure he was talking about Bigfoot. And so I remember asking him, I was like, "Is he a pretty good sized bear?" He's like, "Yeah, he's pretty good size." But he said, "There's far worse things in the mountains than that." And that kind of stuck with me. I was like, "What in the world is he talking about?" And I was like, through my mind, I was like, "Okay, well, it's copperheads, rattlesnakes, you know, coyotes, bears, you know, what else could it be?" And now growing up, you know, we always had the stories of Black Panthers. You know, you'd be out there at night and you hear what sounds like a woman screaming. You know, there was one night I was out with my dad. I'll never forget it. We were splitting firewood, and we heard one of them scream. And Dad said, "Get in the house now." And I was like, "Okay, you ain't got to tell me twice." And so, you know, that's what I figured he was talking about was the Black Panthers. So going on through the rest of that week there, nothing much really happened. And I remember distinctly, you know, going through there every morning, we'd see some kind of wildlife, whether it be deer, turkeys, or coyote, whatever the case may be, because this place was way, way out in this holler. And so Friday rolls around, and my boss came up to me. He said, "You want to stay up here another week after the auction tomorrow?" I said, "Yeah, that's fine." And so auction was over on a Saturday, and then come Sunday, it was wet and rainy, and I was like, "Well, I'm not going to sit in this hotel all day. I can go out there and get some work done." So what I decided to do was just head out there and get a little bit what I could do done. I had a paperwork list full of people who had bought what. So when I got out there, I hopped on a skid steer and I started moving some pallets around. That way I could move their stuff, because we would have had to come back eventually and rig everything out with cutting torches and all that. So we get to the point of where I get done and I start walking around the wood line. And I was walking across this game trail, and I come across a set of tracks, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, "Well, that's a Bigfoot." And you know, I'm a big old boy. I'm 6'6", and I wear a size 12, and I'm like, that's a pretty big foot. And I'm like, somebody's got to be playing a prank on me. So I'm like, either there's a big hobo out here walking around, or it's just somebody's pulling my leg. And so going on Monday, nothing happened. Tuesday, nothing happened. Wednesday, September 23rd, that was the day that quite literally changed my view on everything forever. So I remember distinctly, I woke up late that morning and I got to the gate, and there was a guy sitting there, and I was like, "Well, I'm not going to hear the end of this. You know, I'm going to hear it." So I got to the first gate, I unlocked it, he followed me down in the holler, and I remember we were driving down there that morning, and there was just no wildlife, which I thought was pretty weird. I was like, okay. So we get to the point where I get to the second gate, and I unlock it, and so we get to the area where I had him parked at, and I go hop on the skid steer, and I get what few pallets he had. He had like 2 or 3, and I threw him on his trailer, and he went on about this day. I didn't have anybody else in there for the rest of that day. So I'm sitting there on the skid steer. I was playing a game on my phone. I can't remember what it was. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was Angry Birds. But I'm sitting there and I'm playing a game on the phone. About 1:30 rolled around, and I started getting hungry. So I went over to the service truck, got a peanut butter sandwich and a Coca-Cola out of my cooler, and all of a sudden I hear this growlish grunt. And I'm like, okay, that is something I've never heard before. You know, I grew up hunting and fishing. I know what deer sound like. I know what bears sound like. I know what coyotes sound like. You know, I know the sounds of the woods. And that was something that I had never heard. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm sitting there and I'm looking around, and as where I'm at, it's this big holler, and there's a big flat where the sawmill area was, and there's a couple ridges going up from around it, and they had cliff faces on them. And so I'm sitting there and I'm looking in this flat, and I don't see anything. I'm like, okay. Well, all of a sudden I heard it again. And I looked up on the high wall there, and I could see something black moving through the foliage. I'm like, okay, this is the bear. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching it, and I look down, I look back up at it, I look down, and then when I look back up again, that's when I seen it doing the peekaboo. You know, the classic peekaboo, the Bigfoot grabbing the tree and doing the peekaboo thing. And I said, oh my gosh, these things are real. People aren't crazy. It's a Bigfoot. So only thing I knew I have to do was to pull out my phone and take a picture of this thing, because I knew if I didn't take anything, nobody was going to believe me, because as sure as I tried to take a video, it would have disappeared. So I pulled out my phone and I took the picture. And what happened next just blew my mind, because when I took the picture, I had a brand new iPhone 8 Plus. It just mysteriously shut off, and I'm like, okay, that's weird. So I'm sitting there, and this thing's still up there looking at me. You know, we're having a stare down, and it just turned around and walked up the ridge from where it came. Buddy, I never moved so fast in my life. I climbed in that truck, I locked those doors, and I plugged my phone up. I was like, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. I locked myself in that truck, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And you know, it was like, it was a primal fear, you know, because I was sitting there and I was looking at something that wasn't supposed to exist. And so the phone eventually comes back on, and lo and behold, I've got the picture. And I'm like, yes, I've got it. Everybody's just, this is insane. So going on through the rest of that day, I was sitting in the truck. I had the windows cracked. You know, I was like, I'm not getting back out, because, you know, I'm not calling my boss and telling him I just seen a Bigfoot. So about dusky dark, which is probably about 8:30, 8:40, somewhere around in there, these things started hollering. And I say these things now because I've had a spectral analysis done of this audio, and the vocalizations ranged from 250 hertz all the way up to 2,000 hertz, and it's confirmed that there was more than one creature. Unbeknownst to me at the time, I thought it was just a one. And so I'm sitting there and I'm recording all this, and I'm like, okay, this is something that I don't want nothing to do with, because that thing could have snapped me like a twig. So I go to the hotel that night. I come back the next morning, and you know, there was really no wildlife in there again. And I get to the point of where I'm going to try and find some more tracks if I can. And I go walking along the edge of the wood line there, and lo and behold, I found a trail that led up to that ridge where it was at. That thing came down into that sawmill area whenever I had left last night. Now, I got a pretty good stride between my legs, and I've got video of this, and I couldn't do the strides between the steps of the thing. It was insane. And so going on through the rest of that day, nothing really happened. And then that night, they started hollering again, and the audio was about they hollered about 15 minutes apart. I think it was about 15 minutes apart, but they were further away from me, and it was just insane. The activity that was there, it was unbelievable. And now I went to a drive-in diner the next day because I was going home, and it was called Robo's. It's pretty dang on good food. I need to go back up there someday and eat there again. But this year will be 5 years since my first encounter.
Wow.
And I stopped in there and I seen some old timers, and I was like, if anybody's gonna know what I seen, it's gonna be these old boys. They're born, bred here, born and raised here, and they're gonna know something. So I sat down, I struck up conversation, and then I dropped the bomb on them. Like, you old boys ever seen anything weird or heard anything weird up here? And they all got quiet. And one of them said, well, what did you see and hear? And I said, this. I showed them the picture. I showed them the videos and photos of the tracks, and I let them listen to the audio. They all got quiet. And then that one said, oh, well, those are the devil monkeys. I said, Bigfoot? They said, yeah, devil monkeys, mountain giants, wood boogers, Sasquatches, all the same thing. And I'm like, okay, that's all the validation I need. Little did I know that when I would get home, I would face a lot of ridicule. My family stopped really talking to me there for a while about it, and you know, I just swept it under the rug, and I never really shared it with anybody. And for 3 years, it consumed me. And my wife now is like, you know, you've got a story you can tell. You know, you need to start telling people this. And I went on a podcast in August of 2023, and I was like, okay, I can do this. I can tell my story. And then it got up to the point, I need to get back out in the woods. Well, Thanksgiving of 2023 rolled around, and I went back out hunting again for the first time. And I had 3 years at that point, and I'm like, okay, I can go out and look for these things. Well, little did I know, I was like, well, I don't know how to do this stuff. So I looked up Bigfoot research in East Tennessee, and lo and behold, Scott Carpenter's name had pulled up, and I'm like, okay. But then unfortunately he had passed away in August, and I was like, well, this is a bummer. And now me and his son Travis are really good friends, and he kind of gave me some spots to go check out, and I was like, okay. And I've been to some of those areas, and I've kind of correlated it down to a couple of areas now that especially one area that I've been a lot of boots on the ground in for well over a year now, and I've taken more people into this area, and people like George, they had their first encounter with a Bigfoot, and it's just so awesome. And so it's definitely been a wild ride. I started doing the research December 7th of 2023, and since then I know for a fact that I've seen at least 6 or 7 different Bigfoot. Um,
Wow.
and not to mention, I mean, I've physically laid eyes on 2 Dogman. One was a month ago.
Oh my.
Yeah, I seen my first Dogman January 29th of last year, and I seen my second one just last month.
What
And
was
there's a
that like?
story, huh?
What was that like? Can you describe that?
Dogman is a whole different ball game. I always tell people, when you look into the eyes of a Bigfoot, there's a humanness about them, but they're not to be trusted. But then the Dogman, when you look into those eyes, it's just a very dreadful. If it's like your life just flashes, you get like these visions inside of your head that are just negative. When I seen my first one, my wife was going to be a widow without me. My kids were going to grow up without me. I was going to be a missing 411. Like these things are evil creatures. The Bigfoot. That's one thing. There's good and bad Bigfoot. I ultimately believe that. Although it's just part of the nature of the beasts, as I say. Because in Revelations it says the beast and the beast of the earth shall be unleashed.
Right, Revelation 6:8. Yeah, part of the pale horse rider whose name is death. That's one of the things by the sword, famine, plagues, and the wild beasts of the earth. But go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, and so you know, I it was my first day out, and I started filming. I didn't start filming behind me right away. I was just out there filming in front of me. And whenever I'm out there filming, if I'm filming in front of me, I'm always looking. I ain't paying attention to the camera. I'm always being observant and looking around. And I went out there. I got out there about dawn, and I was freezing my butt off. It was 21 degrees. I was out there for maybe an hour and a half, and I said, you know what? This ain't worth it. And I got home, and I'm sitting there, and I'm watching Scott Carpenter's videos, and I'm really watching how he breaks them down frame by frame, and I'm like, okay, maybe I need to do that. So I started breaking down the videos frame by frame. And in my main research area, there's a gravel parking area, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching that footage. And lo and behold, right there in the laurels watching me is this big head. And I've since named that Bigfoot Blondie. Let me see if I can pull him up here. I don't know if I can do it or not.
Wow.
But he's a big boy. Let's see here. I don't know if I can do it or not. Maybe. Let's see here. But as I'm sitting there and trying to wrap my head around it, he's literally right there, not even 25 yards away from me. I never did see him there with my naked eye, but the phone, of course, picked him up.
Right.
Let's see. I've got right there. He is. Okay. So this is him. Let's see if he moved my head. That's
Yep.
him right there.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I've named him Blondie, and so just this big head just peeking out from around the laurels. And looking back at that area now, since I've been going back in there, there's just this big opening there, and it's just like he could have been there any time.
Right?
So it's pretty wild to think that. I don't know if I can pull this other one up. Let me see if I can find it. But there was an instance that I was the same day. Um, I actually got one on video, and it's walking from the right to the left. I may have to just send that video to you, but he's
Okay.
walking. He's walking from the right to the left, and it's almost like it's phasing in and out. Like it's a pretty wild video. Let's see. This was another one. So this one came from this is a dog man. This was actually the same one that I had seen, but this was from my back trail camera, of course. These
Oh,
teeth,
yeah.
you can see the pointed ears sticking up. There's
Yep,
one ear.
yep.
Yep, and then there's another. So
Fantastic.
I got that on film December 17th, and I seen him on January 29th of 2024. So
Okay.
that Dogman was not on my radar until I
Right?
started catching them on film. I thought it was just Bigfoot. There was nothing else, and the Dogmen are a whole different animal. Their hands. You ever seen a raccoon's hands up close? Their hands look like
Wow.
a giant raccoon hand. Like it's bizarre.
Wow.
Uh,
Hadn't
let's
heard that
see.
before.
Yeah, their hands are insane. I actually had I described my dog man to a T to Chat GPT, and it if I sent it to you, but it made the dog man that I saw, and dude, that was
Oh, yeah. I
intense.
saw that picture. Something else, man.
Yeah,
Sends a chill up your spine.
yeah, yeah. Uh, let's see if I can find this other. So I always tell people, you don't have to go miles out to find any evidence or sign, so to speak. I always tell people to keep an eye out for these big X's. The big
Yeah.
X's are a telltale sign. You can find smaller X's, but I always look for stuff like that. When you see the big X's, that's their land. You don't go past the big X.
So, do you think? Because part of my thought process is it's not only to tell humans to stay out, but it's also to tell other Bigfoot clans, "Hey, don't come in. This area is taken." What do you think?
I absolutely agree with that, and I don't know if I could pull this because we found this. If uh, I don't have the more recent pictures from this, but I can talk about it a little bit. But this is going to be in the film. Uh, let's see if I can zoom this in here. I can't get it to fit. But this was a structure that we had. I first found it on March 29th, but these branches are all mangled up and twisted around. And right here at the base of it, there's a log, and
Okay.
there's sticks laid up on this log. There's 5 sticks, and my buddy David Pardue said that however many sticks they have propped up there is how many is in their family. And so I was talking to him about it. He said, well, then there's 5. And he says if there's a stick laying under the log, that means that one of them has moved on. It's passed.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the
Never
crazy
heard
thing
that before.
So the
Awesome.
crazy the crazy thing about this tree structure. So me and my buddy Jim Powell from Fisher Spams and Night Watch, we went out March 29th. We found all kinds of footprints and stuff, and we've got a little film that we've got coming out. And so the funny thing about that outing was, we get 10, 15 minutes into the hike, and he's just blown away by all the tree structures and everything. And we find a 20-inch track, and so I cast it. And he's like, "You're going to regret that." And I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "We're going to find more footprints." He's like, "We're just 15 minutes into the hike." I was like, "We'll be fine." I kid you not, Brian. About 30 minutes later, we get to going down to where this structure is, and we find a 22-inch track.
Oh my.
And I'm sitting there, and I'm so sick. And as we're sitting there filming and all this, like, Jim gets to the point of where he just stops filming the footprints because we just find so many of them. He's like, "Oh, it's just another
Awesome.
footprint." Dude, it was
Hey,
insane. We were
hey, let's
finding
talk
big
about that for a second. Real quick, because is it a rule of thumb? Okay, so you said what'd you say? 21 incher, 22
22.
inch. Okay, so is that it's usually their height is half of that. So you think it's around 11 feet? Is that right? The formula?
I would think. Well, I wear a size 12 and I'm 6'6". So
Okay,
if one leaves a 24-inch track, I would imagine that it's at least 12 foot.
okay,
So one that
okay.
left a 22-inch track would probably be in the range of 10 and a half to 11 feet, I would guess. I could be wrong,
Gotcha.
but the math just seems
Yeah,
right.
yeah. It just seems to work, and it seems like the ones I found. Say if it's 22 inches, yeah, the width is half of that. It's really weird. It's
Yeah.
sometimes half of that as well, but I guess that depends if it's an adult and has filled out or if it's an adolescent, a younger one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because sometimes there'll be that when the biggest one that we found that this day, it was 22 inches long. It was 12 inches across at the toes and 8.
Are you there?
Is wigging out, man. I've still
That's okay. I can
got I've
edit.
got
So
I was talking about the
yep.
22-inch track. It's 22 inches long, 12 inches across the toes, and 8 inches at the heel. And so they're all they all vary differently. I was trying to some adolescents. I think their tracks. I mean, I just recently, just not last week, but the week before, me and my wife were out hiking, and we actually found a juvenile, like a baby footprint. Check this out. This dude was tiny, man. Like, I didn't even think it was a footprint. It was so tiny. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, check this out, Brian. Little bitty. This is my
Wow.
thumb. This is my thumb next to it. Does it pull up? I don't know if it pulled up.
No, not yet.
Hang on a second. Um, yeah, it is. Like, I've got my thumb down there next to it. It was so
Okay.
tiny.
If you have to, you can send it to me.
Yeah,
But
yeah, there
I
we go.
think
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
okay. Oh
yeah. My
yeah.
thumb's kind of cut out, but you can see the toes a little bit. Little
Oh
bitty.
my goodness, man! And I hear the little ones grow so fast.
Oh yeah,
They are.
I would imagine that they have to consume so much just to grow that quick. And then my wife was in front of me, and she gets to going up the trail a little bit further, and she found this one, and it was massive, man. Like, this ain't even the whole print.
Okay.
This ain't even the whole print, dude. Like, it was
Oh
massive.
my goodness!
Dude, it was massive. Like, the picture don't even do it any justice. She was like, "Babe," I said, "Yeah." She said, "This is a footprint," and she said, "It's really big." And I get up there and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Because, dude, it was just so impressive of how massive this thing was. Let's see.
And
I think I.
and scary too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Let's see. This is another angle of it. Yeah, this is another angle of it. Like, it had rained, and it just, from where it stepped, it just sunk it all in. Well, it ain't up. What the heck? Now my green screen's acting funny. What the heck?
That's okay.
Let's,
Big shout out to your wife for going out with you because I got a couple of people I know. They call it the Bigfoot curse, where that subject divides the household, so to speak. The wives don't want
Oh
the husbands doing it, or vice versa. Oh my goodness.
yeah, dude. Like it sank up in there. That was a lot of weight. You know, my wife, she had a rude awakening into the Bigfoot. So we went hiking on our anniversary last year. We go hiking in this new area that I haven't researched before. We're going along just fine, and we get to the point where we get to these waterfalls, and we are on our way back down the mountain. It was like an hour. How long was it? Hour and a half hike to Wolf Creek Falls when you got hurt. It was 2 hours. Oh, it was a 2 hour. It was a 2 hour hike.
Okay.
So we're on our way back out, and we get to this point of where we get down into the flat area, and it's just a flat walk all the way back. She gets to the point of we hear something to our right, and she says, "What is that?" I said, "It's probably a Bigfoot." I said, "It's paralleling us." I said, "Just stay calm." She said, "Okay, okay, okay." We get to going down there a little bit further. It's still keeping pace with us. She said, "Harley, what do we do?" I said, "You stay calm. You stay calm. You don't show any fear." Okay, okay, okay. Brian, a rock this big comes flying and it lands right behind us. And she takes off running. I said, "Stop, stop, stop." Well, it was by the time it was done too late. She slipped and fell on a rock and broke her ankle.
Oh my.
She was in a boot for 2 months, and this is the worst part. I had to get her from all the way up in this mountain, all the way back to the car, and then get her to the hospital. And all of a sudden, the heavens just let loose, and a monsoon came down. It was thundering and lightning, and we get to the
Oh.
point of where we're about maybe halfway. These people were clearly behind us the whole time, and we didn't even know it. But we passed them on the way up, and they come by and passed us, and they talked for just a couple of seconds, and they ran off and left me. I was like, "Thanks for the help."
Exactly. Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
What a bummer.
yeah, it was a bummer. Let's see. Almost. This is my favorite Dogman though of all my Dogman pictures that I've got, and you know this one all too well.
Yep.
Yeah, this is April 28th of last year. Myself and my stepdaughter's dad, we went out here on this wildlife management area turkey hunting, and we get out there early that morning, and we get to the point where we get out of the vehicle and we start heading the trail. And we get down the trail a little ways. We hit the owl call, and the tom started gobbling further back on this property. And we pulled it up on the map, and we were trying to find where they would be at. And there were some big fields back in the back. And I was like, well, if they're going to be anywhere, they're going to be there. So we went back to those fields, and we went forever. And we get to the fields, and the turkeys weren't there. And they had shut up ever since the sun came up. And so we're sitting there, and I'm telling him, I'm like, well, this was a waste. I said, let's just go. He said, all right. So back in the back of this wildlife management area property, there's a shed where they keep all the tractors and stuff to mow the fields down. And we go in behind that shed up this old dried up creek bed. And because we had it up on the maps, it showed the hiking trail, and it showed that if we went up this creek bed, we'd come up to the trail, and we just hit this trail. And so we get to the point. Whoa. Yeah, I don't know what just happened on my end. That was crazy. Phone just went black.
That's okay.
Are you there, bro?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me all right?
I can't
Can you?
hear or see anything.
Okay. You are
What?
still on?
Brian, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hang on a
Can you
second.
hear me? I'm on, you're on. Everything on my end looks like it's working.
What?
Oh, there you go.
I don't have no idea. My phone just went black.
That's okay,
Try to
man. Are
play
you back
it.
in on your end? I could see and hear you about half the time. Are you back in on your end?
I think I'm back in on my end.
All right, cool.
My phone went black,
Okay,
and
I
I
saw.
couldn't see. I
Yeah.
couldn't see her. I couldn't see or hear anything. I was like, what the crap?
We got all the crazies happening. It's all good. I'll
So
edit as much as I can. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry, Brian. I don't know what's going on with this. It's
Don't
a
be
brand
sorry.
new.
Don't
It's
ever.
a. It's a brand new phone. Like,
It's all good. No worries.
okay, okay. So we get to the point of where we get into the woods. Hunter is in front of me, and I'm behind him. And I noticed right away that something started following us, and I'm like, okay, I know you're back there. You're following us, and I'm like, I'm talking in my head. I'm like, just don't do anything stupid. And we get to going further and further up this creek bed, and it gets to the point of where we get to this trail and we have to pull ourselves up out of this creek bed from this fallen tree. And let me see
Uh-huh.
if I can pull up. This one should be able to show it. Yes, this fallen tree right there. This
Okay.
fallen tree. So Hunter pulls himself up, and I pull myself up so I could just stand there and reach up and grab it. He had to climb up the bank a little bit, but he's like 6'2", 6'3", so I could just reach up and grab it. Because I can reach 8 foot. I got long arms, but I pulled myself up, and we get to going a little bit further, and he just stops and he says, "Harley." I said, "Yeah." He said, "There's something following us." I said, "Yeah, it's been following us for about 20 minutes." He said, "Are you serious?" He said, "What is it?" I said, "It's probably a Bigfoot." He said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "You know I do this stuff." He's like, "Yeah, I know." But he said, "Are you serious? It's a Bigfoot?" I said, "It could be." And so I turned around and I took 3 pictures. I took a picture to the left. I took a picture straight in front, which was in this angle. And then I took a picture to the right. And I said, "All right, let's go." He said, "Are you serious? It's a Bigfoot?" I said, "It's probably a Bigfoot." He said, "All right." So we get to going on and we get back to the vehicle. He drops me off back at home. And I start looking through the pictures. I looked at that first picture, nothing. I looked at this picture and I seen it instantly. And then I zoomed in. I was like, "Oh no!" And I sent it to him, and he said, "Harley," he said, "What is that?" I said, "That's a Dogman." He said, "Seriously?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "So what is it, like a werewolf or something?" I said, "Yeah." And I said, "You're lucky you didn't see it." He's like, "Why?" I said, "You, you're just lucky you didn't see it." And so, funny thing about this area, I had a guy reach out to me from the Cherokee National Forest. He had an encounter with Bigfoot in there, and he told me he grew up next to this wildlife management area. And he said that he knew a boy that went out with his dad at one time in he was in high school at the time. They went out. He was helping his dad hang tree stands, and he wandered away from his dad to go look around. And he found a cave, and he could hear something moving and rustling around in the cave. And he said what came out of the cave was a gray werewolf. And he said that what this shows is that there's a population of these things living and thriving on this wildlife management area.
Oh my goodness.
And I think that the wildlife management areas are where they turn loose their assets, so to speak, because this thing does not look like a full fledged wolf. It looks like a giant pit bull mixed with something else.
Gotcha. You know, to get really outlandish for a moment, I believe what you're saying because some people at home are going to be like, "What are you talking about? This is where they let loose their experiments or their specimens." Let me tell you to the extent that this stuff could be going on, whether it be the American government, I don't know, or the world government. I've even heard of an account of a fisherman stumbling upon a secret NASA base in the Atlantic Ocean where they were holding a megalodon? Is that
Megalodon.
what it is? Yeah,
Megalodon.
where they were holding had caged a megalodon. He said he stumbled on it, saw the huge fin. Yeah, so there's so much crazy stuff going on, and then so much of the motivation, like we talked about before the
Well,
show,
oh,
is super soldiers. Go ahead, go.
I seen something crazy the other day. There's this fashion company that's making a purse out of T-Rex collagen. They're making a T-Rex leather purse. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, if the T-Rex bones have DNA in them, that just changes everything. They didn't go extinct 65 million years ago. They were on the ark.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, as babies. Yeah,
Exactly.
and people are
Babies.
like, they're too big.
Yeah,
Yep.
they didn't put a full grown dinosaur on the ark. They put babies.
Yep.
Well, dragon, not dinosaur wasn't a word, dragon.
Right, right. So the
You
what,
know, even
1840s? Yeah, something like that.
yeah,
We'll have to look that
yeah.
up.
And even to this day, there's still modern day dinosaur sightings. You have Mokalium and Mbembe from Africa, which is like a sauropod, and even just recently in Georgia, my good friend Jessica Jones, the cryptid hunter, she told me that there was an account just recently of a boy and his grandfather that went out hunting, and what they said was a velociraptor jumped out in front of them on the trail, and it just took off right back into the woods.
Oh my goodness. What is this all about? Is it
I've got
pod?
another one that I'm about to drop on you.
Go.
Just a little while back in Gatlinburg, I got a report from a person that said that they weren't the only one that seen this, but they were driving through Gatlinburg on the back road, like coming into the, I can't remember, it's 321, I think. They were on that road and they were coming into, they were either coming from Gatlinburg or going into Gatlinburg, and this thing flying in and out of traffic swerving, and this thing's flying down into the traffic, and they described it as a pterosaur.
Oh my
So if you want to
goodness.
get into the portals, what if these portals just don't go to different dimensions or anything like that? They go through time.
There you go. There you go. Time displacement. Yo, weren't you just talking? We were talking earlier. What? Some kind of collider like CERN is somewhere? Go ahead with
All right,
that story.
the hydrogen ion collider is in Oak Ridge National Laboratory. And that's why all this Dogman activity is amping up here in East Tennessee. There was a guy that was on the confessionals. He's a truck driver. This Dogman's chasing him down the interstate, and it scratches his semi up. Right on I-40 in Knoxville.
Oh my goodness. So it's getting crazy out there. That does make me think about, I always bring this up in my episodes. Luke 21:11, in the original Greek. So Jesus is talking and he paraphrases, in the last days you will see, fearful sights and signs from the heavens. Well, that fearful sights in the original Greek is the word phobotron. And that word phobotron originally actually means monsters. And then if you throw in the things descending from the heavens, apo,
Yep.
things that will come directly from the sky and from the heavens, Oranos. So basically, in my opinion, Jesus is saying, hey, look at the last days just before I come back. Yeah, all the stuff, earthquakes, all that's going to be happening, but you're also going to see monsters and UFOs.
Yep. Well, even if Tucker Carlson came out a while back and he read a document that said that UFOs are demonic and they come from the ocean.
Mm. My goodness.
There's no
So
such
it
thing as a coincidence, man. You go out in the woods and you see lights moving through the woods, and then you have Bigfoot coming out on you, like Dogman, all this other stuff. It's just like there's no such thing as a coincidence, And my second encounter with a Bigfoot was when I realized there was more to these things than being just an ape. I used to think whenever I seen my first one, I thought they were just an ape. So it was me and my wife. We went out and we're hiking down the trail, and she says, "Look at those trees over there." I was like, "Yeah." She said, "That looks like something out of a movie." I was like, "Okay." And so I go over. I told her to stay on the trail, and I'd go over and look. And I get to the point of where I'm going back in through there, and I find these two logs that are laying like this, and the leaves were matted down like something was laying there, and I stepped it off, and it was roughly 8.5 feet, and I was like, "Well, I don't think there's a black bear that big." And by that time, I heard something moving, and I hollered at her. I said, "There's something moving back here." And I said, "I'm gonna go check it out." So I get going further back in the direction of where I'm hearing the sound coming from, and I come across this game trail. Like these branches are up high, broken, and I'm like, "Okay, I don't think this is elk because we have elk here in East Tennessee, and I found some of from where the bulls rub on the trees." And so I'm standing there in the middle of this game trail, and I just get this gut feeling, like just look right, just look right. So I stop and I turn and I just catch a glimpse of this reddish brown figure stepping behind the tree, and I'm like, "Oh crap!" And I'm sitting there and I'm like, "Come out from behind the tree. I know you're back there." This thing steps out, and we're looking face to face at each other. He's like 7.5, 8 foot tall, and he crouches down behind this big laurel bush. The laurel bushes are everywhere down here. They're green year round. They don't die off. And so he peeks his head out of the bush to look at me. I can see him real well. He's got reddish brown hair. He's got gray skin, jet black eyes, a big frumpy nose, and he's kind of got like a little goatee going on with hair. And he's just sitting there and he's looking at me. And when I was looking into its eyes, I was like, there's something human about you. And we're sitting there and we're locked eyes for about 30 seconds to a minute. All of a sudden, to my left was the pop and a smack of a big branch breaking. Like it wasn't a little one, it was a big one. It went, Ksh. I'm like, okay. And from behind me, I don't know if it was running towards me or if it was just stomping in place, but there was something behind me. I didn't take no chance. I didn't know if it was running towards me, if it was just stomping. I was like, all right, I'm going. And I just booked it out of there. And so that was when I realized that there was something more to them. Of course, I took to the scripture and reading, trying to figure out what they could have been. It talked about Cain. He was cursed to be a restless wanderer of the earth, but it didn't really specify what the curse was. Then
right.
I looked at Esau. Esau was born covered with red hair from head to toe, like a hairy cloak. And I'm going to give a shout out to my buddy Doc Brown right quick. This is his book, The Epic of Esau. Ties Esau into the Nephilim giants and all that. It's a phenomenal book.
Awesome.
It ties into the birthright and the seed war. Like it's opened my eyes to a lot. And then of course, everybody's favorite topic, the Nephilim, the men of renown, the offspring of human women and the fallen angels. That's tend to be where I lean more towards. They are remnants of the fallen. But what I'm about to tell you right now is going to be insane. So, a buddy of mine has a podcast called the Bump Podcast, Bo Kennedy. And he was emailing this woman I think she was from Pennsylvania, I believe. But she had a relationship with a Bigfoot. It would come and visit her in its physical form as a Bigfoot. And then it would come and visit her as an orb. And it communicated with her telepathically. And she started gifting it and stuff. And then it got to the point of where they started to communicate more. Well, then it gets to the point of where she asks it what it is. And it tells her that it's a Eliud. Well, what's the Eliud? The Eliud are the children of the Nephilim.
Wow.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. So generations down the line, that's what we've been wondering.
Yeah, I mean, you even go and look at the Sasquatch Genome Project. Okay, there's a lot of debate behind the Sasquatch Genome Project, but it's 100% legit. And people try to say that the DNA is not right. It's right. So Sasquatches have the mitochondrial DNA. The mitochondrial DNA comes from the mother. The mitochondrial DNA of a human mother from the Middle East 2,000 years ago.
Oh my. Is this Melba Ketchum?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
now I'm
yes.
remembering. Go ahead.
And so the father is something completely unknown to science. Now, GenBank has every DNA sample from everything on the planet, and the father of a Sasquatch is not in there. So there's no such thing as
And
a coincidence. There's no such thing as a coincidence when these things can do what they do. The cloaking, the mind speak, the orbs, all this other phenomenon. There's no such thing as a coincidence.
I totally agree. I totally agree, my brother. Hey, listen, do you have anything else you want to say? I want to wrap it up. If we need to
Yep,
get you back again, that's cool too. But what else you got?
that's insane, ain't it?
Yeah. Oh, crazy. Oh my gosh. I mean, that one looks very human like.
Yep, just the
Oh,
jet black eyes, man, jet black.
oh my goodness. Rarely do I
E-
sit back in my chair in the podcast studio, but I saw that and I'm like, oh my gosh.
every one of them that I've seen has had these black eyes.
Wow. And so they're mainly nocturnal, right? But they come out in the daylight. From my understanding, they do like to be in the heavily shaded areas. What are your thoughts?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. They stay in the cover, and they have. I think they have a system. I think they have some that stay up during the day that way they can watch and keep an eye on things, and then whenever nighttime rolls around, they just swap roles. Like I always
Ah,
say it. They're the watchers. They're always watching. Like this one was behind me, and I didn't even know it. I had the feeling that I was being watched. This came from December 9th of 2024. I went back to the exact spot of the footage of where this was at, and sure enough, that's when I had the feeling I was being watched, and he's sitting right there watching me.
fantastic, man. Well, I gave you L.A. Marzulli's email, so hopefully, brother, he'll hit you up and give you your own episode because these are some fantastic pictures. See, you've got the pictures, you've got the biological evidence, footprints, all of the above. Hey, and I know you're a speaker at some of the conferences. Are you going to be anywhere coming up?
Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference in Gatlinburg. I'll be on the roundtable for it. It's July 26th. Then Tennessee Wildman and Cryptid Con is in August. And then Crossing Realms Conference in Missouri. I'll be there as well. And I mean, whatever else conference pops up, I may just pop up and be there. I know I'll be with the NCI guys at some of their other conferences. So if y'all keep up with them, I'll be there with them.
Very cool. Well, where can we reach you on your social media platforms, and how do people get a hold of you?
Oh yeah, best way is Facebook Messenger. Just look me up, Harley Owens. I have a Facebook group called Bigfoot Reports and Data. That's the and symbol. I have Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, X. I mean, it's all under the same name. That way, everybody can find me. It's pretty easy, and I can get Brian the links to all of them, so he can post them in the description down below.
Fantastic, brother. Fantastic. Well, I hope to do this again. You're like me. You're constantly going out in the field. So that's what I do like about us is our stories aren't just, not that there's anything wrong from it. Say you saw something in 1983. Nothing wrong with that. But what I like about us, we're getting out. We're
Oh yeah,
going out especially as much as possible. So, Harley, thanks so much for being a part of my show, the Bigfoots of America podcast. You are episode 19, and I can't wait to talk to you again. But I'm going to go ahead and put you backstage and wrap it up, and I'll be there in a second.
Alrighty.
Hey, everybody. So thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Bigfoots of America podcast. As you can see, we are hot on the trail of all things cryptid, paranormal. We're trying to figure out how these things connect. And in our realm, like talking with Harley, and I think a lot like Harley, that these things are connected to the biblical narrative about being the offspring of the Nephilim, going way back to Genesis 6, where the fallen angels got it on with earthly women, started spawning all types of giants, and then they started getting on with different kinds of creation, which spawned all these other type of werewolves, and even Greek mythology, probably the Cyclopses, the Satyrs, the Minotaurs. So we do believe that all of these creatures connect somehow to the biblical narrative. But with that said, thank you so much. And as always, stay tuned for more of the Bigfoots of America podcast show. See ya.